Jasmine Crockett stuns JD Vance on live TV with a savage comeback audience left in shock. The CNN town hall stage gleamed under the studio lights. Red, white, and blue banners waved gently on screens behind the podiums. There was tension in the air, not just political tension, but something heavier, something personal. Backstage, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stood still. She adjusted her navy blue pantsuit. Her breath was steady, but her heart pounded just beneath the surface. In her hand, a simple black folder, worn at the edges, but packed with documents that would change the course of the night. Through the curtain she could hear him, Senator JD Vance, confident, dismissive, commanding the stage like a seasoned performer. His voice was smooth, practiced, and full of calculated charm. "Let's be honest," he said, his voice broadcast across the studio. "Congresswoman Crockett is exactly what's wrong with our national security apparatus. She has no experience, no credentials, and no business commenting on issues that determine the safety of our country." There were gasps, then applause from the conservative half of the crowd. On the other side, some shifted in their seats, visibly uneasy. "She's a freshman lawmaker," he continued, more interested in social media soundbites than classified briefings. "And let's not forget, this is the same woman who's called our intelligence agencies suspect." He smiled at his own jab. The crowd laughed. He soaked it in. Behind the curtain, Crockett said nothing. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She listened. Because tonight wasn't about volume. It was about receipts. Chris Wallace, the night's moderator, glanced at his notes. Then, back at the crowd. "Please welcome Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett," he announced. The audience responded with a mix of cheers and cautious applause. The curtain parted. Crockett stepped forward. Her posture was calm, her face serious, composed, not angry, focused. Her presence changed the air in the room. She took her seat across from Vance. The visual contrast was immediate. The white, Harvard-educated senator from Ohio, former venture capitalist, now a proud defender of real America, and the black freshman congresswoman from Texas, civil rights attorney activist, sharp, unshakable. "Thank you," Chris Crockett said, placing the folder beside her. "I've been listening to Senator Vance's remarks, and I'm here to set the record straight." Wallace nodded. "Let's begin." JD Vance leaned forward. "I don't question your intentions, Congresswoman," he said, smug, "but I do question your qualifications. National security is not a field for amateurs. It's not something you learn on Twitter." Murmurs. Half the crowd chuckled. Crockett didn't react. Instead, she tilted her head slightly. Calm. Curious. Like a lawyer studying a witness who didn't know they'd just confessed. "My role on the House Judiciary Committee," she said, "involves direct oversight of intelligence and security agencies. That's not just a talking point. That's in the job description." Vance laughed. "Committee membership doesn't make you an expert," he snapped. "I've handled top-secret briefings. I've sat in rooms with real threats. You've read summaries, a few claps, some uncomfortable shifts." Chris Wallace raised a hand. "Let's allow her to finish." Crockett nodded. "It's fascinating," she said, "how Senator Vance is so concerned about experience and security protocols, especially given his own record." The room froze. JD Vance narrowed his eyes. "What record?" he asked. Crockett opened the folder. Click. A camera zoomed in. She pulled out a document. "This," she said, "is a report from the Department of Defense Inspector General. Dated June 2022. She turned to Wallace. "Could we display this, please?" The studio screen flickered. A government document appeared behind her. Official letterhead. Redacted names. Highlighted text. "Page 47, Crockett said. Paragraph 3. She paused. "It cites then-Senator-elect JD Vance in connection with what the report calls unauthorized disclosure of restricted security materials during the presidential transition period." The crowd gasped. Vance's jaw clenched. "That's taken out of context," he said quickly. "And that report was written under the Trump administration," Crockett interjected. by an inspector general appointed by your own party. Are you suggesting it's fake? He didn't answer. Crockett continued. I also have here, she said, pulling another sheet, a follow-up assessment from September 2023. It reaffirmed the original findings. The redacted portions. They didn't involve the section that named you senator. Silence. Vance's supporters had gone quiet. Chris Wallace shifted uncomfortably in his chair. This is a political hit job, Vance said. I've been targeted for speaking the truth. No, Crockett said. This is accountability. You question my qualifications. I'm questioning your credibility. She paused. And then, you want to talk about national security. Let's talk about why, according to sworn testimony, you instructed staff to reassign any personnel who didn't fall in line with our security expectations. Just days after your own breach was reported. Vance's face turned pale. The screen behind her changed again. An email chain appeared, subject lines, dates, names. I also have, she said, a signed affidavit from James Keller, former Deputy Director of Operations. He states that you said, and I quote, "We need to clean house of anyone who doesn't understand how we do things now." She looked up. The context, she added, was a direct response to being notified about your own protocol violations. Gasps. Again. Vance looked to Wallace, then to the crowd. This is absurd, but his voice lacked conviction now. She came with documents, someone in the crowd whispered. He came with attitude. Chris Wallace leaned forward. Congresswoman, what are you saying? Crockett gathered her papers. I'm saying that leadership isn't about how many classified folders you've touched, she said. It's about how you handle them. With integrity, with responsibility, with respect for the law. She leaned in. You don't get to attack my record when your own raises questions that you still haven't answered. The crowd erupted, and JD Vance for the first time had no response. The crowd hadn't fully settled when the first clip hit the internet. 10 seconds of silence, JD Vance blinking. Jasmine Crockett standing still with a document in her hand, eyes steady on the camera. And then the screen behind her. Page 47, paragraph 3. That sentence alone was enough. By the time the CNN town hall cut to commercial break, Twitter, now called X, had already birthed the hashtag Checkered Crockett Receipts. Clips circulated in real-time, fast edits, slow zooms, split screens. On one side, Vance smirking. On the other, Crockett's calm voice slicing through the noise like a scalpel. Let's be very clear, she had said. National security doesn't belong to the loudest man in the room. It belongs to the most careful. Backstage, JD Vance stormed off set. Get me the RNC press team now, he snapped, pulling the mic off his lapel. A young producer tried to stop him to adjust his collar. He didn't slow down. I want a rebuttal posted within the hour. Say she's manipulating documents, use the word fabricated. One of his aides whispered, but the reports are public records filed through FOIA. Vance stopped. His eyes narrowed. Then say she cherry-picked. Say it's out of context. Just spin it. He vanished into the green room. The door slammed. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett remained seated under the lights. She calmly took a sip of water as the audience murmured around her. Chris Wallace leaned toward her, voice low. That was unexpected, he said. Crockett offered a quiet smile. Truth usually is. Her phone buzzed again. Another notification, then another. Her inbox was filling DMs, repost headlines from every major news outlet. Breaking: Crockett cites Vance in IG report over security breach. Crockett brings government receipts to national stage. CNN town hall, meltdown, JD Vance. Stunned, silent. She set the phone down. She wasn't here to celebrate. She was here to finish what she started. The next segment began. Wallace faced the camera. Welcome back to the CNN town hall. What we just witnessed was a tense, document-driven exchange between Senator JD Vance and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett regarding national security credentials. The camera panned. Vance had returned to his seat, shoulders rigid, face flushed. But the energy was different now. The audience no longer leaned toward him. They were leaning back, watching, waiting. Wallace continued. Before we turn to audience questions, Senator Vance, would you like to respond to the Congresswoman's citations from the Inspector General's report? Vance cleared his throat. His voice was flatter now, stiffer. What we saw here was a classic example of political theater, he said. Cherry-picked documents removed from full context. This isn't about national security, it's about scoring viral points. Silence. Then an audible scoff from someone in the second row. He ignored it. I have served this country's interests with full transparency, he continued. And if the Congresswoman thinks quoting a redacted report proves anything— She didn't quote a redacted section, someone in the audience interrupted. A ripple of awkward laughter moved through the room. Crockett sat still, letting the moment hang. Then she spoke. With respect, Senator Vance, the only person turning this into theater is the one who expected a monologue and got a mirror. Gasps again. Wallace intervened. Let's move to our first audience question. A woman stood up. Early 50s. Denim jacket. Neutral expression. I'm a registered independent, she said, and I came here tonight with no strong opinion. But after seeing that evidence, I have to ask Senator Vance, do you still stand by your claim that Congresswoman Crockett lacks the credentials to speak on national security? The room fell quiet. Vance hesitated. My point remains, he said slowly. Having access to information is not the same as knowing how to interpret it. We can't afford amateurs in this space. There were murmurs, not applause. Murmurs. Crockett didn't wait for a cue. I agree, she said calmly, which is why Americans should be deeply concerned about elected officials who mishandle intelligence and then blame the whistleblowers. The camera zoomed in on her face. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. She just let the words sit. Outside the studio, the internet had already moved into full gear. Late-night comedians scrambled to rework their scripts. On The Daily Show, a mock split screen appeared. Left JD Vance in full, confident swagger. Right Crockett folder in hand screen behind her, glowing with damning evidence. Caption, how it started versus how it got destroyed. TikTok exploded. Clips of Crockett's line, then say it's fake. But it's your administration's report. Were layered over trap beats, slow motion effects, and side-eye reactions. One video caption simply read, "She didn't come to debate. She came to document." It racked up 2.4 million views in 2 hours. Meanwhile, GOP leadership went into emergency PR mode. Behind closed doors, calls were flying. What the hell was JD doing going off script? Did he not get the prep memo? Why didn't we anticipate Crockett coming with receipts? Campaign consultants began running simulations. Could this segment affect independent voters? Could it hurt Vance's long-term credibility in swing states? No answers came back clean. In contrast, the Democratic side was alight with activity. Crockett's staff couldn't keep up with the inbound messages. Get her on MSNBC tomorrow. Offer her a keynote spot at the fall summit. Even members of the House who'd previously dismissed her as too green were rethinking. She just rewrote the playbook, one senior aide texted. Did you see how calm she was? She didn't raise her voice once. She didn't need to, came the reply. She had the folder. But Crockett wasn't thinking about virality or headlines. She was thinking about what came next. She knew tonight wasn't the end of the fight. It was the beginning of a new kind of political accountability, one that didn't rely on shouting spin or empty outrage. One where truth didn't come wrapped in rhetoric. It came on government letterhead, under oath, attached to names and dates and real consequences. Her job wasn't to win a viral moment. It was to show that evidence still matters. And if she had to bring a folder to every stage in America to remind people of that, so be it. The silence in the studio wasn't awkward. It was loaded, heavy. Something had shifted not just in tone, but in alignment. The room no longer pulsed with the usual push and pull of political partisanship. It leaned toward gravity, toward evidence, toward her. Jasmine Crockett didn't celebrate. She just sat still like a judge who had already handed down the verdict without ever raising her voice. JD Vance, on the other hand, began to unravel slowly then all at once. He adjusted his tie again, cleared his throat. Twice, Wallace tried to offer a lifeline. "Senator Vance, we understand politics can get heated, but do you have any direct rebuttal to the Inspector General's findings?" Vance nodded sharply. Yes, I do." He leaned forward. "There's a difference," he said, "between actual national security violations and administrative issues that get inflated by political opponents." Wallace raised an eyebrow. "So you acknowledge the report names you I acknowledge." Vance replied that the report mentions my name in the context of a much broader set of circumstances. Crockett tilted her head slightly. "Page 47 isn't broad, Senator. It's specific." The audience chuckled, not mockingly, but with the quiet recognition that someone had just drawn a red line. Vance's frustration cracked through his smile. "This is absurd," he snapped. "This isn't a courtroom. This is CNN." "Then maybe act like the cameras are on," someone muttered from the crowd. More laughter this time. Real, unscripted. Vance heard it. He stiffened. "You think this is funny?" he asked the audience. "You think exposing classified information is a joke?" The room turned colder, because the irony was thick and everyone could feel it. Crockett didn't react. Instead, she opened her folder again. Just one page this time, a transcript. "This," she said, her tone calm, "is from your testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee on December 13, 2021. Wallace nodded. "Let's bring it up." The screen behind her glowed. Crockett read the line aloud. "I never shared any classified information outside of authorized government channels." She looked up. "But the IG report lists 3 separate incidents where that exact thing happened, and all 3 trace back to you." The studio didn't erupt. It contracted. No one clapped. No one shouted. Even Vance didn't speak. He sat still, eyes locked on the glowing screen behind him, now bearing his signature. Crockett folded the document. "I'm not here to attack you, Senator," she said. "But you attacked me first. You questioned my competence. You questioned my commitment to national security." She paused, and now we all see the irony. Wallace said nothing. He didn't need to. The studio lights felt sharper now, the silence louder, and the balance of power completely reversed. Outside the studio, the internet didn't just react, it detonated. One post on X went viral within minutes. JD Vance questioned her credentials. She questioned his record. He had applause. She had documents. Another post had just 3 words. She brought proof. Memes flooded TikTok and Instagram. Vance's opening smirk. Crockett's folder. Caption, "That's when he knew." Even late-night comedians didn't need to write new jokes. The footage did it for them. Back in the studio, the final questions began, but the mood had changed. One man in the audience stood up, mid-40s, business attire. His voice was even. "This is for both of you," he said. "But I want to hear Congresswoman Crockett first." In one sentence, what qualifies someone to speak on national security, Crockett didn't miss a beat. "Integrity," she said, "because without that access and experience mean nothing." Applause. This time from all sides. Wallace turned to JD Vance. The senator hesitated, then offered his own answer. "Perspective," he said, "because experience without context can be dangerous." It was a good line. Too bad it came too late. As the lights dimmed and the credits rolled, producers scrambled to wrap up. But everyone knew the real story wasn't ending here. It was just getting started. Crockett had done more than defend herself. She'd redefined the terrain. She didn't argue, she revealed. And the room, once tilted against her, was now firmly in her corner. The town hall was over, but the reckoning had just begun. Inside JD Vance's private holding room, the mood was grim. 3 aides sat silently. One stared at a laptop, watching the clip of Crockett's folder reveal for the 7th time. "She didn't even flinch," he muttered. Vance paced. Jacket off, tie loosened, face flushed. She ambushed me, he snapped. That's what happened. We weren't given any warning about those documents. No one expected she'd bring IG reports, one aide replied carefully, let alone verified declassified ones with follow-ups. They were meant to embarrass me, Vance barked. Sir, respectfully, another aide said they weren't edited. They were facts. Vance stopped. For a moment no one spoke. Then he turned toward the table. We need to flip this, he said. Control the narrative. Call it a partisan stunt. Say she violated ethics by introducing unrelated materials. Except they were directly related, the aide whispered. Then say she's showboating, playing to Twitter. He looked around the room. Get me on Fox tomorrow. I'll say this proves how the left uses intelligence leaks to smear patriots. Nobody replied. Meanwhile, Crockett sat alone backstage. She didn't scroll her phone. She didn't check her mentions. Instead, she quietly zipped up her briefcase. She hadn't come to win a fight. She had come to remind people that the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to show up with documentation. Chris Wallace passed her on his way out. I've done hundreds of these, he said, pausing. That one will be remembered. Crockett nodded, her voice calm. Let's hope they remember the evidence, not just the moment. On television, the spin had already started. Fox News opened with a bright headline, Vance under fire in ambush by far-left Congresswoman. A panelist said this was political theater, plain and simple. Another added Jasmine Crockett clearly rehearsed that attack. But even conservative viewers noticed something strange. There were no denials, no corrections, just deflection. And, in the age of receipts, that wasn't enough. MSNBC ran the full segment unedited 3 times in one night. Their headline told a different story. Crockett delivers calm, surgical takedown of national security hypocrisy. CNN simply captioned it, Documents Speak Louder. By morning, Roger Crockett receipts had reached over 58 million impressions. Clips were embedded in classrooms, commentary channels, and civic forums. Even apolitical influencers started weighing in. That woman didn't raise her voice once, and still dismantled him with facts. That's how you do it. She didn't clap back. She cited page numbers. A meme appeared across Instagram with Crockett's face overlaid with the words, no drama, just data. It caught fire. Behind closed doors, senior Republicans were worried. One strategist spoke candidly on background. This wasn't a debate loss. This was a character blow. Vance didn't just look wrong, he looked exposed. Another added, we underestimated her. That won't happen again. In the Capitol, Democratic aides began circulating clips to reporters. A senior Democrat sent a message to leadership, get her speaking nationally. Put her on oversight committees. She's not just a fighter, she's a force. But Crockett ignored the fanfare. She returned to her hotel room, unzipped her briefcase, and filed her folder back into its place. Not a trophy, a record, a habit, a warning. Because she didn't come to perform. She came to prove that evidence still matters, and she wasn't done yet. By the end of the week, the phrase Crockett receipts had become more than a hashtag. It was a political standard. In Capitol Hill offices, staffers rewrote prep packets. Don't just brief your boss, one aide muttered. Train them to survive a Crockett moment. Across the aisle, even Republican consultants quietly adjusted strategy documents. One memo leaked from a major PAC read, Assume full document drop. Do not rely on charisma alone. Do not underestimate female lawmakers from oversight committees, especially her. In one congressional orientation session, a young freshman asked nervously, should I expect televised hearings to go that far? A senior member smiled. Only if Jasmine's in the room. Laughter followed. But it wasn't a joke, not anymore. Late-night comedy shows couldn't get enough of it. The senator said, you don't know security, one host joked. She said, cool, page 47. Another quipped JD Vance thought he brought a mic drop. Turns out she brought the script. Even satire had its limits, because the real footage was more powerful than the punchlines. Clips were now being studied, not just watched. law schools, journalism programs, media literacy classes. A professor at Georgetown called it an exemplar of disciplined public accountability under pressure. But the most surprising ripple wasn't in politics. It was in culture. A teacher in Detroit taped Crockett's quote above her whiteboard. Leadership isn't about touching folders. It's about handling them with integrity. A nonprofit printed T-shirts that read, "Bring the folder." A college debate team rewrote its final round prep manual to include a section titled Crockett Protocols Receipts Before Rhetoric. And quietly, without press release or celebration, a ripple moved through public trust. It wasn't loud. It was steady. People, voters, viewers, skeptics started to remember what it looked like when someone came prepared. Not just to defend themselves, but to reveal a deeper truth. That substance still mattered. That silence wasn't submission. That being calm wasn't being soft. And that receipts weren't drama, they were discipline. Meanwhile, Crockett's team declined dozens of interviews. No press blitz, no merch, no political fundraiser branded with the moment. Instead, she returned to committee work, reviewed testimony schedules, read case law, prepared, the same way she had before the town hall. When asked by a reporter how she felt about the attention, she replied simply, "It wasn't about attention, it was about record correction. The documents existed, I just brought them into the light." And with that she walked off. No soundbite, no slogan, just silence, which by now was its own kind of power. In private circles, some began to wonder, had JD Vance fully recovered? His next few appearances were tightly controlled. No live audience, no open Q&A, no risk of folder moments. He'd become cautious, measured, almost rehearsed. The edge was gone, and viewers noticed. Comments on YouTube and news clips reflected the shift. Where's that fire he used to have? He got Crocketed and never bounced back. He used to talk down, now he just talks small. The standard had shifted, not just for him, for everyone. Now, when politicians walked into a room, people asked, "Are you bringing facts? Or just feelings? Are you ready for a folder moment?" Because Crockett didn't just bring evidence, she brought expectations.